Welcome to Naked Spirituality, a video blog series of sacred attention therapy and the Center for Human Awakening. My name is Rob Meager. For more information about sacred attention therapy, the Center for Human Awakening, and our video blog series, please visit our website at www.centerforhumanawakening.com. And center is spelled C-E-N-T-E-R. These video blogs support one of the Center's core activities, which is collaboration and partnership with individuals, communities, and healing centers practicing personal growth and spiritual development. Our guest today is Lawrence Gold, and we will be talking with Lawrence about his healing work through somatics. And now I will bring Lawrence on screen. And I'll welcome you, Lawrence, to our video blog series. Thanks for being with me today.
Thank you.
Lawrence, your expertise is in the area or the healing modality of somatics. And for those not familiar who are joining us today, for those not familiar with somatics, could you describe what somatics is?
Yes. To understand somatics, you first have to understand the word soma, which is its root. It's an ancient Greek word, which means, as obvious as it sounds, the living, sensing, acting body. Simple as that. So you are a soma, I'm a soma. All living creatures are somas. And somas are characterized by sensing and moving. And for humans, sensing includes the full spectrum of experience, all the way from mind through intuition, as well as through the gross physical body, the ordinary senses. In other words, everything you can possibly perceive, internally or externally, falls into the domain of sensing. And movement includes not just physical action, but even the movement of attention. And I said attention, there are three more facets that we'll get into a bit later, I expect.
Okay.
So that's the gist of the word soma. So somatics is the study of how somas, that is living beings, experience and act. So one of my core teachers, Thomas Hanna, who coined the word somatic as an adjective, spoke of soma as the body experienced and controlled from within.
Mm-hmm.
And he distinguishes that from body, which is something generally that you see and think about. But if you're experiencing it from your own viewpoint, you're experiencing it somatically. If you look at somebody else, you're seeing a body.
Mm-hmm.
So in somatics, when you speak of healing work, you're speaking really of clinical somatic education.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to define somatic education, so I might as well do that right now.
Well, yeah, could we allow that as a foyer into your work, both as a practitioner and as an educator? Because if one does explore your website, it's clear that you do a lot of work in education with somatics. So could we begin with that educational side of your work with somatics? And what is this educational work that you do?
Okay. Well, somatics is entirely educational. It's all about awakening a person's faculties, integrating them. It means getting them to fit into their lives in a functional way. Evolution, which is the development of those faculties to higher and higher levels of organization and function. Said another way, it's just becoming more and more proficient or masterful.
Mm-hmm.
And then transcendence. And I have to define transcendence because there's a gigantic error in public thinking about what transcendence is. Most people think transcendence is somehow to be apart from and separate from something, like some sort of a spirit that exits and goes someplace else. This is not transcendence. That's dissociation. It's a pathology. And it's a pathology that infests all manner of spiritual traditions. Transcendence means to include something and to be more than it. So you're not ensnared by it. You are more than it is and are in the master or control position relative to it. Or the position of freedom. That's probably a better way of viewing it relative to it. So when I say transcendence of the faculties, it means that you have mastered them to such an extent that they are easy. In fact, that is the definition of mastery. The master makes things look easy.
Mm-hmm.
At that point, you have outgrown it, but you don't exclude it. You simply are open now to the next development.
Mm.
And that's how transcendence leads to the next stage of awakening.
Mm.
So you have an awakening, you have a differentiation in which you learn to distinguish the thing that's awakening from everything else,
Mm-hmm.
a development of it as maturation, evolution, which is the awakening of new faculties within that set of abilities, and then transcendence. And it's a cycle and a cycle and a cycle.
Mm. Now, this educational process, and I'm using this word educational process,
Mm-hmm.
Does it happen in a one-on-one setting, or are there groups? Are there online courses? How is it offered? How is it extended?
Well, clinical somatic education has two main branches, one of which is one-on-one using hands-on clinical techniques. And the purpose of these techniques is to awaken sensory awareness and to aid a person in developing self-control. The reason I'm distinguishing it that way is because therapeutics is generally manipulative.
Mm.
It comes from outside and the person lies there in some passive fashion. Somatic education is 50-50. Half the practitioner teaching and guiding and assisting, and half the active participation of the person who has come.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So there is that one-on-one.
Mm-hmm.
Then there is, not even involving a person, recorded instructional materials that a person can use to awaken those faculties, because it comes from within anyhow.
Mm-hmm.
And the other is groups. So some clinical somatic educators hold classes in somatic education exercises, which are primarily concerned with physical comfort and movement.
Okay.
So that's clinical somatic education.
Okay.
And it's entirely a process of a person learning and developing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
However, there's another aspect. Clinical somatic education is actually a subset of somatic education.
Okay.
And that'll come clear as we get into our conversation shortly, I imagine.
Now, many of the videos that are on one of the websites I've seen of you, it shows, I believe it's you, in a practitioner role. And do you still work one-on-one or in groups with people as the practitioner, in effect, treating some dis-ease?
Yes, that's one of the main facets of my work. These days, because I live in a relatively small town called Santa Fe, New Mexico,
Okay.
population 60,000,
Okay.
it turns out that a lot of my clientele come from different places in the world. So they come for what I call an intensive, and it's 3 days or 5 days. And our intention for those sessions is to clear up pain that they've had usually for a very long period of time. And the process itself works very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why we can get so much done in an intensive like that. So yes, I do clinical work with people.
Okay. All right. Now, there's two techniques, and I'm excited to explore these a little bit with you. There's two techniques or teachings, and again, these are words I'm using, and please, as you respond to this, if you want to clarify terminology, please do. But two techniques or teachings have emerged from your work. The first is the tetraseed transformation procedure.
Yeah.
And the second, the gold key release. So the first tetraseed transformation procedure and the second gold key release. Can you describe these procedures or these techniques to us?
Sure, but first I need to clarify the distinction.
Okay.
The gold key release is the entry-level tetraseed transformation procedure.
Okay.
So the two branches I enact with people are the clinical somatic education and the tetraseed transformation procedures. Those are the two branches.
Okay.
The tetraseed transformation procedures are more about consciousness, and you may call it mind if you want, but it goes far beyond mind. Mind is generally the thinking mind and concepts, and this goes way past that. And again, we can talk about that some more.
Yeah.
So now I can answer your question in a more suitable, satisfactory way. The tetraseed is the name I've given to the fundamental structure of consciousness. Fundamental structure of consciousness is universal. There are no exceptions. And that structure consists of 4 facets, and I'm going to show you those 4 facets momentarily here.
Okay. Okay.
All right. So there are 2 aspects to the tetraseed, and everybody is familiar as can be with those 2 aspects. One of them consists of attention, intention, memory, and imagination.
Okay.
So in every moment, everybody is always constantly attending to what their experience is. They have some sort of intention going relative to it.
Mm-hmm.
Their ability to recognize it is dependent on memory. And the process of change that everybody is constantly experiencing and undergoing falls into the category of imagination. It's emergence of the new. All 4 are operative at any given moment. All 4 are essential for experience in any moment. Mm-hmm. If your attention disappears, no experience. If you have no intention, you wouldn't even notice the thing. It wouldn't show up for you. Mm-hmm. If you have no memory of it, you couldn't recognize it as something. Mm-hmm. And if you have no newness emerging, then it just fades out from your experience the way a perfume that someone wears ceases to be noticeable by them. Mm-hmm. Intention and attention, memory and imagination are synergistically combining at every instant of experience. The other side of it is the objective side, whereas the first 4 are subjective. They're internally experienced, they're subjective. Okay. Objective is location, or localizing.
Okay.
Activity, or existence. And I'll say more about that, why they are actually the same thing.
Okay.
I've got the word persistence here. I've since upgraded that. I'm now referring to it as consolidation.
Okay.
And it's funny, it always happens like this. It vanishes as soon as I go into it. Consolidation, the flip side of consolidation is integrity.
Okay.
Okay. It is the cohesion of experience.
Right. Okay.
And imagining has to do with change and appearances. Mm-hmm. So we might say changing appearances. Okay. For a location, it's localizing location. That is how you find the things, you localize them. Mm-hmm. With existence, it's actually activity existing, or existence active. Okay. If activity ceases for an instant, the thing utterly vanishes. In physics, they call that absolute zero. No motion, no energy exchange.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Certainly.
It's a curious question on my part. All of these elements, so yes. On the inside, the attention, the intention, the remembering or remembering,
yes.
And then on the outside, the location, the existence, the integration. This is all as expressed or manifest through the body, correct?
Yeah, well, they're just 2 facets of the same thing.
Right. So the location, the existence, the integration, that's as it relates to and through the body and what the body is manifesting and what the body is showing us.
Sure. Would you like to hear how?
Please.
All right, then. So memory is the subjective experience, but if a clinician were to look at your body, they would see physiological changes occurring. They would see the nerve synapses exchanging neurotransmitters. They would see changes in muscular tension, breathing, heart rate, okay? Anytime a memory forms, there's always a physiological change occurring. So the neuroscientists have identified processes occurring in the brain that are what they can observe of memory formation, but they're seeing it from an objective perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And because they're seeing it from an objective perspective, they don't have the experience of the person who they are observing, which is experiencing it subjectively. But they're just two views of the same thing happening.
Mm-hmm.
There aren't two, there is one. So when people speak of oneness, what they're really talking about, even though they don't understand it this way, is the fact that they're experiencing one thing, but they're describing it in multiple ways.
Mm.
So the language makes it seem like there's more than one, but there ain't. There's only one process that can be perceived from different perspectives.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about intention.
Okay.
Bodily, that's movement.
Mm.
Intention always involves movement of some sort.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Attention involves the senses, locating things.
Mm.
And so externally, we can see eyes and ears and nose and so forth. Those are the external appearances of what for the person is an internal experience of sensing.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And imagination or imagining shows up as the ongoing process of change that's occurring in the physiology.
Mm-hmm.
So they are actually just two ways of viewing the same thing,
Mm-hmm.
or of describing the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
But in any given moment, they're all occurring simultaneously. So I pointed out that in the subjective side, if any of those four were to cease to operate, all four disappear.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
On the objective side, if something ceases to have a location, no thing there.
Mm.
If it ceases to have integrity, again, it completely dissipates, it's gone.
Mm-hmm.
If it ceases to change, it's gone. Okay, so all of these are just words that describe a single process that's as familiar as can be to everybody in the world.
Mm.
What isn't so familiar is the fact that a person can modify those processes in themselves.
Mm.
To this point in human history, humans have been heavily memory dominant.
Mm.
And that means it's the passing on of oral traditions, it's teaching of one sort or another, skill sets,
Mm-hmm.
Roles in relationships. And only the exceptional individuals have been, let's consider, gifted with an enhanced imagination.
Mm-hmm.
So we call them artists and developers and innovators and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
Where what we're experiencing now is an awakening beyond mere memory into a deliberate ability
Mm-hmm.
to activate and to capture
Mm-hmm.
emergent experience through imagination. The most common form of that is learning, the ordinary sense of learning.
Mm-hmm.
Learning involves the transition of something from imagination into memory, from change into consolidation and integrity.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, like dreams, things evaporate without that being captured.
Mm-hmm.
However, if you look at how you learn anything, typically you imagine it to yourself repeatedly, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So imagination and memory are two aspects of a continuum. They are continuous with each other, even though the words make them sound as if they're different things. In fact, they're not.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's just that we have the ability to focus on a different facet of experience and highlight it. But in fact, all four are always operating.
Mm-hmm. One of the things I'm struck by, Lawrence, in speaking with you and learning more about your work is the holistic approach. Now, that word is used a lot, and let me try and qualify that a little bit, possibly as a segue into sharing, our respective works and talking a little bit about that. But holistic is used a lot in therapeutic realms, and it refers to I think in general, looking at different aspects or dimensions, of the person who's meeting with you. But what I'm struck by, and what I mean by a holistic view in the work you do, is you're not only looking at what's presenting itself to you, the physical body, but what's going on the inside. With an awareness as a practitioner that what's going on the inside is what's manifesting on the outside.
Exactly.
And that the world is not the cause of what we're feeling, experiencing. We're actually the cause of what it is going on out there. And law of cause and effect. And so one thing I'd like to do, and I thought it would be fun, and I've actually never done this with another practitioner who's participated in this series, is share with you some, maybe all the 7 elements, but maybe just a few, of core elements of something we call at the center sacred attention therapy, which could be summed up as listening with the whole self as the practitioner to the soul of the other, listening with the whole self to the soul of the other. And there are 7 core elements that we may, as a practitioner, employ. This is not the whole of the sacred attention therapy work, but could be considered a core of it. And these 7 core elements could be considered toolkit of sorts, of which, as a practitioner, we carry with us very, very lithely. We always go in favor of the energetic charge as opposed to some procedure and following a systematic process of being with someone in the healing process. So these tools, if you want to call it that, merely may be guideposts that will allow us into inquiry with the individual. And so I thought we could explore a couple, maybe more. And if you could share what might be the equivalent approach or technique in your work with somatics that could demonstrate actually how connected our approaches are. And I'll begin with something we call in sacred attention therapy called family beliefs. An exploration of one's early childhood conditioning is often fundamental and core and foundational in sacred attention therapy. And it similarly, but simply may refer to those early beliefs that are established out of those core relationships that are born out of the nuclear family and predominantly is formed by our relationship with our parents. Some examples of family beliefs might be life is hard, or I am guilty, or there's not enough. Is there something within the work you do with somatics, as you've shared with us, that speak to or enter into or invite into the healing process some exploration of family beliefs?
Sure, but first I have to lay a certain foundation.
Okay.
As I said, the tetraseed, the set of 4 facets, subjective and objective, are the underpinning of everything. So they're also the underpinnings of all of the tools used in sacred attention therapy. That said, there are certain tetraseed transformation procedures that are better for one application than others. In relation to your comment about family beliefs, you're raising the subject anyway, much of that occurs completely non-verbally through a process that I call somatic contagion. Somatic contagion is not weird and hard to understand. When you see somebody yawn, it makes you want to yawn. When someone starts laughing around you, you start to laugh. There are spontaneous communications at a nonverbal level that evoke responses in us. So in the family life, the parents are exemplifying attitudes and patterns of tension and relaxation in different ways to different situations, and the kid picks it up non-verbally. They just start to resonate with it. Now, that's the subjective side. The objective side in neuroscience is this discovery of what they're calling mirror neurons.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I think they're off base a little. I don't think it's mirror neurons. I think it's mirror patterns in the neural network. It's not a neuron. It's a pattern in the neural network or of the neural network.
Mm-hmm.
Kids pick it up. Everybody picks it up, but kids are in a particular phase of life where they are sponges. They are booting up their personality, their character. It's forming from all of the influences of family life, and they show up as patterns of attention, what's important to look at, patterns of intention, what kinds of behaviors are acceptable or not acceptable, memory is the remembering of all of that, and imagination, which is the formation or incoming all the time, the learning process.
Mm-hmm.
So that said, family beliefs can easily be dealt with tetraseed transformation procedures, mostly by doing what you alluded to earlier. You said following the energy. I call it a trail of breadcrumbs. If a person has an issue in life that's troublesome to them, it's in their face right away. Very easy to spot. The first thing I do with a person is the entry-level procedure, because some things just dissolve very easily with a gold key release.
Mm-hmm.
Now, since we've used the title a couple of times, would you like to hear the steps of the gold key release?
Please share.
Okay, it goes like this. When a person has something that's bugging them, I say, once they've located that experience, feel having that.
Mm.
Notice where you feel it in you.
Mm. Mm.
Feel the shape of its intensity.
Mm. Mm.
Feel intending it. Feel refusing it.
Mm.
Feel intending refusing it.
Mm.
Feel refusing it.
Mm.
Feel intending it. Feel refusing intending it.
Mm.
Feel how it all matters.
Mm.
Feel how it mattering involves you.
Mm.
Think to yourself, it's true. It's true.
Mm.
Think to yourself, it's untrue. It's untrue. It's untrue. It's true. It's untrue. It's untrue. It's true. It's true. Remember the feeling of it's true. It's true.
Mm.
Remember the feeling of it's untrue. It's untrue.
Mm.
Allow how remembering involves imagining.
Mm.
Stop imagining. Let it dissolve and dissipate. Awaken.
Mm.
Is it more, less, the same, or gone?
Mm-hmm.
If it's gone, you're done. If there's something left, feel having it. And we start the cycle again until the thing is so dissolved that the person has trouble remembering what it was. It goes into a virtual or latent state. It loses its power. A person ceases to have a feeling of being in its grip.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's why it's called release.
Mm-hmm.
It's not suppression. It's full confrontation along the lines of these steps
Mm-hmm.
and the dissolution of it. What's left is an intuition of the ground of being, which is formless. It's experienced as a kind of radiant consciousness that words cannot adequately portray, but becomes the person's plain experience when they do a good outcome on a gold key release.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So with family beliefs, if a person has a conflict about, they'll say life is hard, if you want to choose that one. They may not even know that. They may just say, my life is so hard. I say, fine, feel having that.
Mm.
Notice where you feel that in you. And we run through the procedure.
Mm.
Very often it dissolves in one pass. Sometimes it's 3, and with really deeply entrenched, encrusted material, I do another kind of preparatory procedure that I call simply the setup procedure with them.
Mm-hmm.
And what the setup procedure does is turn on the 4 faculties of intelligence: attention, intention, memory, and imagination, and their corresponding location, activity, persistence or consolidation,
Mm-hmm.
and changing appearances. It turns them on, it integrates them with each other, and it's like setting up the bowling pins to be knocked down. It makes the
Right.
item that they're working with a big visible target, and then the gold key release is much more
Mm-hmm.
able to wipe out something that's deeply entrenched. So that corresponds to what we would use for family beliefs. There are about 7 other procedures,
Right.
but I'm not going to go into those at this moment anyway. We'll just play with what you have in mind here with the tools of SAT.
Could we explore one more?
Certainly.
And already learning from you the approach that you invite, I'm going to try and select one that may bring in another dimension of your work. So I'm going to pick what we call, again, one of 7 core elements, subpersonalities.
Okay.
So subpersonalities very simply are aspects of ourselves, or aspects that we believe to be of ourselves.
Sure.
The idea is, as we chronologically grow up, not psychologically grow up, but as we chronologically grow up, we develop these strategies or almost defenses to life. And they may be aspects to our personality. So you could have the controller. There could be a controlling dimension to you. And that comes into play in situations where you feel you need to take back control of the situation.
Yeah.
Perhaps it's the nature lover that comes out in you when you get out in nature. Just 2 very simple examples, hopefully. The idea, however, is that as we go about chronologically in our life, these different aspects of ourselves split. And we begin to identify with these aspects of ourselves. But in the work of sacred attention therapy, we try and bring back the fractured pieces into a whole.
Right.
But we can't begin to do this until we identify the little pieces that have fractured off, and we try and bring it back together. So
Right.
these subpersonalities are something, they're aspects of ourselves. And is there an equivalent, or is there part of your work that speaks to something that's similar, for example, to subpersonalities or aspects of our personality, and trying to bring them back to a whole, integrated self?
Right. Okay. So there are actually 2 facets to that. One is the making them distinct, that you can work with them, and the second is the integration. And Norbert Spencer drew the distinction that Ida Rolf liked to quote: differentiation and integration. Now, I found that there are 2 more beyond that. There's transcendence and there's development. Okay? But let's just take it with differentiation and integration. If you want to work with those 2 facets, it's helpful to make them vivid first. That's the differentiation. And the setup procedure would be the procedure that would be handy to use for that. It makes the things vivid. There's another procedure that brings 2 things into relationship with each other, which is the integration aspect. And first I'll tell you a little about the procedure that does it, and then I'll tell you the additional wrinkle that gets dealt with.
Okay.
So the procedure I call the middle way memory matrix ritual. I have to clarify the term middle way because people think it means moderation in all things, and it does not. The middle way is the feeling of inclusion of the full spectrum of experience. That means all extremes and everything in between, without fixed bias to any position. That's what makes it the middle way. It's not biased. It's inclusive. So the middle way memory matrix ritual takes a chosen pair of items that you want to work with and puts them in relation to each other. And without going through the full procedure, I'll just give you the first few steps so you get a sense of where this is headed. So the first thing we do is we name the two items. Let's see, you used controller and nature lover, as I recall. That's fine. This procedure works with all pairs, and I could say more about it, but not at the moment.
Okay.
So you would go like this. You would think to yourself the word controller, nature lover, controller. That gets your attention on those two. The next step is intending the controller, refusing the controller, refusing the controller, intending the controller. Order makes a difference, so we do it both ways. Then we would go intending nature lover, refusing nature lover, refusing nature lover, intending nature lover. So now we've flushed up any conflict that we may have in any of those subpersonalities. Here's the next step. Intending nature lover, intending controller, intending controller, intending nature lover, refusing nature lover, refusing controller, refusing controller, refusing nature lover. So what I've just done there is I've shown you how we put the two subpersonalities into relation with each other, but we also put each in relation to its opposite or its resisted aspect. And then the procedure goes on in different combinations, every possible combination, and some you wouldn't even think of, in order to show the hidden or unconscious things that are going on in a person all the time that are making these into complications in a person's life. So now I have to say something I didn't say when I talked about the tetraseed. And that is that those two sets of four facets aren't always equally online. One or more of them may be either undeveloped or impaired. That's what gives the feeling of being out of control. The other three are maybe voluntary, but maybe your memory is occluded. And so you're not playing with a full deck. You don't have all of your cards. Or maybe you have feeble intention. Or maybe you're obsessive in your intention. Or maybe you've got no imagination about it. All you've got is memory, and things seem like they're never going to change. Or maybe your memory is too wild and you're ungrounded. And you're acting without respect for what should be taken into account in your memory. So if any one of those is impaired, or one or more, the person gets stuck in arrested development. Their faculties are not available to them because they're not playing with a full deck. How do you get to play with a full deck? You turn on all four of those facets in both the objective, that is what it looks like, and subjective, or what it feels like inside. And at that point, you can start to grow again. In fact, it occurs during the procedure. The reason I brought this up is because in the middle way memory matrix ritual, as we turn on those facets, those that were in unconscious and running on automatic, suddenly recognition of what's been messed up in us occurs, and a spontaneous internal adjustment occurs.
What I appreciated about what you just described, and the terms you've been using, the gold key release, is how one of, and if not the purpose, but one of the results may be the release of whatever it is we think we're experiencing.
And what we feel as that experience.
Right. Of which, not to get too entrenched in this idea of consciousness, but all of which is unreal, all of which is an illusion.
Well, I take a little bit of issue with that. I think it's a bit of a crude translation from either the Sanskrit or the Hindi, because illusion appears, it suggests that the thing isn't actual, whereas it's actual. What it is, though, is it's conditional, it's temporary, it's impermanent.
Right.
And it feels permanent when one or more of the four in the tetraseed are impaired or undeveloped.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, you can call it illusion because when the dissolution occurs, you see that it wasn't a necessary, inevitable aspect of experience, even though it sure seemed like it when we were impaired in one way or another. However, it's actual. Your experience, when you stub your toe, never mind if it's an illusion or not, it hurts.
Yeah. Well, as I often share with people, it's real because you think it's real. And it's that you are thinking that it is. You stubbed your toe. This is awful. This is good. This is indifferent. It's happening because you're thinking it is.
Well, I have another thing about thinking, though. I say this from time to time. I say thinking is like the monitor or display on your computer. All it is reporting what's going on, but thinking is not the potent approach. And it's not even the thinking itself, it's the feeling underneath the thinking. Because you can say banana, there's not a lot of charge to banana. But if you say tarantula, another word, a lot more charge.
That's right.
And I said tarantula because tarantulas live in banana trees.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Not because I'm bananas.
Okay. Lawrence, I know we've touched only the tip of the iceberg with the work that you do. And hopefully we'll have an opportunity to come together again and dive deeper into. But until that time, if someone wanted to reach out to you, to contact you directly, to find out more about the work you do, get involved in the work you do, how would you do that, Lawrence?
Well, the simple, easy way is to do a Google search with the term, my name, Lawrence Gold Somatics.
Okay.
That will get you to me. But you must put that term in quotation marks in the search box.
Okay.
Get exactly that term. Otherwise, you may get someone else named Lawrence Gold or other terms related or other uses of the word somatics.
Sure.
So Lawrence Gold Somatics is the easy way.
Okay. Okay. And it's important that that be in quotes.
In quotes. That's how Google search engine recognizes you want that exact phrase.
Okay. All right. And that will provide then the person with some hits that they can click on to explore your work further.
Yes, it will get them to me. It may not get them to this particular body of information,
right,
but it will get them to a page where there's an email click box.
Okay, very good. Okay. Yeah. We'll make sure, Lawrence, that that's in the scrolling credits at the end as a way for people to do follow up with you.
All right, then.
Okay. Thanks so much, Lawrence, for being with me today. And thanks for sharing your work with us.
Thank you. Thank you for this conversation.
Okay. Take care. Bye-bye.
Adios.